Hi there, I'm Fred Trost here. I'm glad you joined us for this edition of Michigan Weekend. You know, Michigan Weekend is the only show in the state that covers hunting and fishing.
And I'm Kathy Fleck, and I'd like to add that we also look at Michigan's wildlife, just as we're going to do on this edition of Michigan Weekend. Nature photographer Tom Sterling will be giving us a beautiful look at the fall colors as he takes us on a canoe trip through southern Michigan.
We're also going to be talking about pheasant hunting in Michigan. This year may not be quite up to par as last year, but the season opens October 20th. Be a lot of pheasant hunters in the field, so I'll give you a few lessons on how to pluck a pheasant, along with an interesting recipe on how to cook them.
Michigan Weekend is brought to you by your one-stop shopping store, Meyer Thrifty Acres.
And by Michigan Out of Doors, Michigan's leading outdoor magazine.
I'll be right back with special guest Tom Sterling, but first this word from Meyer Thrifty Acres. Just chatting here with Tom Sterling, wildlife photographer and lecturer, and we were talking about color tours in Michigan, which is a really popular event in Michigan in the fall. Do you have some film for us today on color tours?
Yes, I do. This is a most interesting way, I think, to discover fall in Michigan by canoe.
Sounds great.
I've been in many places in North America, and I don't think any geographical location in the United States can equal the color in Michigan.
I think you're right.
In the fall.
Spectacular.
And one of the best ways to enjoy it is by canoe. You get away from the crowd, the noise of civilization, into a quiet canoe and move through Michigan's waterways.
Where were these pictures taken?
These were all taken in Jackson County in southern Michigan. And of course, the fall of the year is the time that the acorns come off the trees, and the acorns are fed on by many birds and mammals, like the white-tailed deer. And of course, one of the sure signs of fall are the grackles, red-winged blackbirds, and starlings out in the fields, gleaning the scattered grains left by the combine. Now, of course, once they've picked up most of the grain in the fields and the cold weather sets in, these birds will move south into Kentucky and into Virginia and Maryland, that area. The white-tailed doe, of course, she's very aware of the birds, any sounds around her, very keen-eyed, and of course is constantly seeking solitude, along with her constant search for food such as the acorns and all kinds of wild edibles. She nibbles on just about anything that interests her. Here we see her nibbling on dogwood. These are the berries of the dogwood. And of course she's caught sight of us in our canoe, and we're going across the marsh to a stream and a pond to just enjoy some of nature's fall color in southern Michigan. Now this fellow, he should be heading south. This is a redhead duck. He's one of our diving ducks. And of course that redhead adds splendidly to the color of fall in Michigan. But in just a few days he'll be gone and on his way south.
What week, was this in October?
Yep, this is the first week in October. Prime time for color in southern Michigan is usually the first week in October.
Oh, that's so nice. The weather's warm and it's beautiful.
These are what I call, and many other people call, the Indian days, Indian summer. You have a few warm days that come along. The insects are gone that bother you in midsummer, and it's cool. And at the same time, you get all this warm color.
Did you put your snorkel on for this?
Yes, I use underwater housing, and don't have to go very deep, obviously, but it gives the viewer, I think, a different perspective on nature. I don't very often think what the bottom side of a canoe looks like when it's going through a lily pad pond like this.
Feels like you're in a dream. It's beautiful.
We're approaching something here that is synonymous with fall. These are Fringed Gentians, and they're a fall blooming flower. Quite prevalent along waterways. They're a protected species of flower and quite pretty and add a lot of color to the fall. They're a deep purple and sought by many people who like to photograph wildflowers.
They're beautiful. Are those only found in specified areas in the state, or are they pretty much all over?
Yes, only in wet areas. You usually find them in wet areas along streams, and they're just beginning to bloom right now. This little fellow, he may look awfully large on the screen, but he's only about 6 inches tall. This is a little red-phased Screech-Owl, and he spends most of his daylight hours sitting up in the treetops. And occasionally he may see something stroll by that might catch his eye. It might also catch the eye of a person who likes to hunt deer in the fall. This is a nice big white-tailed buck, and his velvet is off, and he's ready for the fall rut. One of the nice things about canoeing is it's silent. You're not encumbered by the noise of outboard motors, etc., so it permits you to get very close to wildlife. In this instance, we're getting up on a muskrat who's feeding along the shore.
Seems that you get closer to the wildlife than most of us do with your camera. It's great.
I enjoy it. I like to get eyeball to eyeball. This is the wood duck. And many people believe that the wood duck is perhaps our most beautiful North American bird. And I've never gotten too many arguments on that. I don't think you can beat the combination of fall colors and a male wood duck in fall plumage.
Now that's preening.
Yes, he's preening.
What actually is he doing?
Oh, he's cleaning his feathers and he's adding oil to them because his life depends on his plumage and having it in excellent condition at all times.
Tom, that's absolutely fantastic footage. You know, you're going to be seeing a lot more of Tom Sterling in the future in Michigan Weekend and probably all over the state lecturing. His photography is just exquisite. And you know, hunting with a camera is something that you could do too. A lot of people go out with 35mm cameras to catch the fall color and nature shots. Meyer Thrifty Acres has a camera that's on sale this week that is just the ticket. Listen.
The Yashica FR2 is a fully automatic single lens reflex. Shutter speeds from 4 to 1,000th of a second. It comes with a 50mm lens. This week at Meyer, the special price of $198. Pick up a Keiko model 2500S Bounce strobe, a real savings at only $49.88. And check out the popular 3-zippered carrying case with padded compartments, only $17.97. It's always why pay more prices on photo equipment at Meyer Thrifty Acres.
Well, all you small game hunters out there, you're probably getting ready for the October 20th opener for pheasants. Get the choke set on your shotguns. Now, this year isn't going to be quite as good as previous years. We'll be talking about that. Let's go to some film that was taken back in 1969. That was back in the days when I worked for Mort Neff. And we were hunting on the farm of Walter Jones. My father, Norman Trost, was there, along with George Bragg, who's a native of Monroe, and Chuck Aller, who now works in Pontiac, lives in Holly. And the dog we used, his name was Daisy, a good Weimaraner. Unfortunately, she's not with us anymore. I've seen her days, but boy, we have some good pheasant hunting days right here. This was back in 1969, as I said. And in those days, still, private land was better for hunting than the public land, as it generally is today. However, there is a lot of public or private land opened up for public through the public access stamp. We're out here tromping the fields, the traditional 10 o'clock opening time, see if we can get some of those ring necks up. Well, there we go. A hen flushes early. Oftentimes hunters see more hens than cockbirds, especially later in the season. Now this year, unfortunately, all you pheasant hunters, the pheasant populations are way down, and this is all across the state. The pheasant populations were really damaged this past winter. In fact, Bill Fouch from the DNR says the brood surveys that are taken by mail carriers late in the spring, early summer, indicate that the pheasant population across southern Michigan is down 40%. That is way down. But there still will be some pheasant hunting to be had. In the past years, we've taken, 800,000 or so pheasants. Now, a year ago, 650,000 pheasants were bagged by Michigan hunters. This year, it looks like it's going to be down maybe less than 500,000 pheasants. Now, of course, people are concerned. Some people get concerned. They think, wow, the hunters are knocking down the populations of game birds like this. Well, that just isn't true. You see, one cock pheasant can serve maybe 6, 7, maybe even more hen pheasants during the mating season. Well, an equal number of hens and roosters are hatched. So if only the cockbirds are taken from the flock by hunters, then that really doesn't damage the reproductive capacity of the population, because one rooster can serve, as I said, 6 or so hens. But something like this past winter was really hard on the population, because not only were the roosters affected by the winter, but many of the hens died as well. So that cut down the reproduction this spring. Now, Bill Fouch says for the future, next year, can hunters expect to find more birds in the field? Well, if we have a mild winter, everything that was lost this past winter could be gained back again. But for this fall hunting season, there probably will be plenty of activity around. The put and take areas are open. And as I said, the public access stamps have opened up a lot of public land or private land that is open for public hunting to southern Michigan hunters. But the question is, a lot of people say, you know, that isn't chicken we have there. Those are pheasants, wild birds. Cooking wild birds is a little different than cooking chicken, maybe, so we do have a recipe for that. So what we'll have to do is hang up our guns about now and talk about cooking pheasant, because this is what 500,000 or so birds hopefully will end up in the cooking pot this season. But how do you do it? Well, first of all, this recipe we're going to be talking about depends on plucking the pheasant. Now, plucking a game bird generally is a far better way of preparing it than by skinning it, although many people skin the birds just because it's easier that way. But plucking is going to give you a much better flavor. Of course, plucking can be sort of a pain. So this is what I did to illustrate how to pluck a pheasant. Also, this can be used on ducks and any game birds. Stepped inside my camper there for 20 minutes or so and boiled some water in a galvanized bucket. You want enough boiling water to dunk the bird in, completely dunk it. And we'll dunk it for about 30 seconds. Well, now, I don't mean about 30 seconds. I should say exactly 30 seconds. Even if you leave it in 10, 15 seconds longer, you're going to start to cook the skin on the outside of the bird, and the feathers will just come out and the skin will come off, and you really won't be doing what you want to do. We just want to pluck the feathers out, leaving the skin on. Boy, that's hot. Ooh. Oh, looked like it bit me there. It was in that scalding water. But there, pull the tips of the wing feathers off. If they come out easily like that, then you're ready to pluck the bird. You might want to let it cool for a half minute or a minute. Now, plucking a bird can be a little messy, you know, with your fingers. Getting feathers, they seem to stick to your fingers when they're wet. There are some techniques, I don't have it mastered yet, but there's some techniques that the real pros use where they can peel off layers of feathers. You can see by this technique you can peel them off. Just roll them right off of there, leaving the skin. Occasionally I tore the skin a little bit, but there's that familiar look, what chickens look like at least when you buy them in the supermarket. Now we're left with a pile of feathers, and the bird is starting to shape up, look like one of those rubber chickens a magician might pull out of a bag. So all you have to do from this point is remove the head and cut the feet off. And then you have what looks like a traditional bird, ready for the pot. Also, you have to remove the entrails at this time. So clean the bird, save the giblets, the heart, the liver, the gizzard. They're mighty fine eating too. So there we are with the plucking of a pheasant. Now we've taken you this far. We're going to be back in just a minute to cook that bird. But first I want to remind you the public access stamp program for this private land. There's a list of all of the private land that's open, some 120,000 acres, or 107,000 acres, which you can pick up for free from DNR offices, Farm Bureau, ASCS offices, Cooperative Extension offices, and so on. So be sure to pick that up. Also, there's lots of good tips in Michigan Outdoors magazine. This is a special deer hunting issue, the November issue, so pick one of these up. And if you're a new subscriber, hey, once again, it's half price. Just listen. Nautical maps for sailors and power boaters, lake maps especially for fishermen, topographical maps for backpackers and hikers, county maps for anyone who travels, a trout stream directory for anglers, and the wildlife chef for anyone who enjoys good food. Where do you get these publications? The details are in Michigan Outdoors each month. For new subscribers, a special half price off this month, only $3.75 for 12 issues. Send your check to Michigan Outdoors, Lansing 48909. This offer expires October 31st, so subscribe today.
Well, Fred, now you've showed us how to shoot and dress the game bird. Are you going to cook it for us?
You bet. Let's get out our fall recipe booklet for a Michigan weekend and go to our mobile camper and cook up this recipe. This is recommended by nationally known outdoor writer Byron Dalrymple. He lives in the Southwest, but he's cooked an awful lot of game birds over the years. And he recommends this recipe for if you're not sure whether a game bird is young or old. Sometimes the older ones can be tougher. So this is called simmered game bird. Really makes a tender meal. First thing you'll want to do is get some butter going in a Dutch oven. Some sort of pan like that, a deep pan with a lid on it. And then it's a very simple recipe. We're going to take some flour, put it in a paper bag. This is the easiest way to roll meat in flour, at least birds like this.
And then do not put the bag over your head.
No, don't do the unknown comic routine after you do this. Add a little salt and pepper to season it. That's all you need. And shake the game bird in the flour and put it in the Dutch oven where the butter is already sizzling.
You don't need to coat the bird with milk or egg or anything?
No breading of that type. You don't have to do it with egg. In fact, it probably wouldn't be too good of an idea. A lot of these national outdoor writers like Ted Trueblood and Byron Dalrymple and these fellows, they like to come up with recipes that don't distort the flavor or try to cover up the flavor of a game bird, but instead bring out a good, tasty flavor.
Purists.
Right, they are purists, and they just have excellent recipes. My only feeling was it's hard to stuff a whole game bird in here, so I cut it in half, but I think next time I might even try quartering it, just to get it down a little lower. But you just brown the bird quickly on both sides, and of course we put the giblets in. They don't take long to cook at all, a heart, gizzard, liver. A lot of people cook those for the same length they cook the bird, but there's no point in leaving those tiny little things in there for an hour. Now you can wrap up some baked potatoes and put them in the oven. And turn that burner way down. After you've got the bird browned, turn it way down. Now you can add some wine. Byron Dalrymple calls for a gentle wine. White wines for white-meated birds, darker wines for dark-meated birds. That would be like ducks and so on, would take the darker. And put in maybe a third in the proportion, 1/3 wine, 2/3 water. But don't put any more in than half covers the bird. Bring it up halfway. You don't want to submerge it. Okay, now put the lid on and let it simmer for 1 hour. That's about the time it takes to bake a potato. Also, you can get out some peas. A green vegetable is good with this recipe. Get it on the stove. Boy, can you imagine all the smells in this little camper? Oh, it's so nice.
Delicious. On a cold winter day.
Oh, yes. So good. And of course, the smells get outside.
Looks like you have company.
Oh, yes. Company comes.
She must have smelled it.
Yes, she did. Comes knocking on the door of the camper, a surprise guest. I usually put a second baked potato in anyway, just in case somebody drops in. By golly.
Oh, she sat right down.
Yeah. Well, she knows a good meal when one is cooking. So here it is. Now, after an hour, check the bird, check the pheasant with a fork, and if it flakes like that and it's tender, it's done. Put it on a plate and serve it up. It's always good if you have some company there that's ready and waiting.
gravy?
Sure, the gravy, I just used it right from the pan. You can thicken it with flour if you want, but it's tasty just the way it comes out of the pan. Now,
I'm waiting.
now for the test. Let's watch the look on her face. What does she say? Ooh, yeah, it's okay.
You do know how to impress them, Fred.
Well, I tell you, now a lot of people expect, or they're disappointed, I guess they'd say, that game birds don't taste exactly like chicken. Well, you know, these days, chicken hardly tastes like chicken. They raise them in a little 2-foot square box and feed them very quickly. But these game birds have been out eating natural foods for at least a season, and they're tasty. After you take a couple bites, especially when one is cooked this way, it's tender and juicy. Really, you'll love it. Now, how about that gizzard? Huh? You want the gizzard? No, she
No,
doesn't
thank
want
you.
that. Oh, but it's tasty all the way around. All that cooked right there, right in the camper. Easy to do. You can cook it that way. All you need is the Michigan Weekend Fall Recipe Booklet. It has a number of other good recipes in here. And also, the recipes for this month are in Michigan Outdoors magazine. So if you're a subscriber or pick one up at the newsstand, you'll find the recipes right in here.
And there are a lot of recipes in the Wildlife Chef, and just watch this to see how you can get one.
The news for pheasant hunters is basically this. There are no hot spots in the state. Last year's hot spots were hardest hit by the severe winter, so all over southern Michigan the population is just about the same anywhere you go. So good luck pheasant hunting on October 20th.
Why don't you try and get outdoors this weekend? It's a great place to be.